Hello, everybody. This is our last text in this term. Let me remind you, we have learned how to read a poem, part of a play, and in this we did the soliloquy of Macbeth. And we have done one short story that was A Family Man. And this time, which is the last time, we are doing part of a short story that is called Boys and Girls. Now, of course, before you listen to this video, it is a must that you read the short story, because if you just watch the video and listen to my analysis without having read the short story, then this will be meaningless for you. So I recommend reading first the short story and then listening to this video. Okay, so Boys and Girls is written by Alice Munro. And you can understand that this is the photo of Munro, who is a contemporary writer, كاتبة معاصرة, contemporary, معاصرة. So who is Alice Munro? Let's see. Now, Alice Munro was born in 1931, and she is a Canadian writer who writes in English. You know, in Canada, some people write in French and some people write in English. So Alice Munro comes from the part that speaks and writes in English. She is a short story writer, and the interesting point is that she won the Nobel Prize in Literature, جائزة نوبل للآداب, in 2013. This is very recent, for her work as master of the contemporary short story. So she won the Nobel Prize because of her skill in writing short stories. And all her works were described as revolutionizing the architecture of short stories. تثوير بناء القصص القصيرة. Architecture here means بناء, especially in its tendency to move forward and backward in time. This is a general reference to her short stories. Most of the time, the setting, المكان of Munro's fiction is set in her native Huron County in southwestern Ontario, somewhere in Canada. Usually, her stories explore human complexities, تعقيدات إنسانية, in an uncomplicated prose style. So she explores complexities, but her style is very simple and not complicated. Munro has received many literary prizes, in addition, of course, to the Nobel Prize. For example, she received the 2009 Man Booker International Prize. Also, she is a 3-time winner of Canada's Governor General's Award for Fiction and many others. So you can see she is an established writer, كاتبة راسخة. And that's why I chose to finish our syllabus with her short story. Also, this is a contemporary short story, قصة قصيرة معاصرة. What is Boys and Girls about? First of all, this story is narrated by a young girl. And we So, as we have just said, Boys and Girls is narrated by a young girl who is leaving or about to leave her childhood. And, you know, in childhood, there is a lot of freedom. In other words, this girl is on her way to grow up. So we see the details of her daily life with her family, and the family consists of her father, her mother, and her brothers. She describes her feelings about her mother, and she does the same about her father. So she tells us her feelings about her parents. At the same time, she describes her father's work in detail, بالتفصيل. What does her father do? He is a fox farmer, مربي ثعالب. And she helps her father a lot. And she does that willingly, بإرادتها. That's why she can describe her father's work in detail. We do not see her brother, but we know she has a brother because this brother is playing somewhere. And so we understand the brother is younger than the girl. The story takes place on the farm, Mazra, and in the middle of this farm, there is a house where the family lives. So we move from the house to the farm, from the farm to the house, and so on and so forth. Okay, now when we read a story like this, and this is the very general summary of the events, what do we do when we start analyzing? We can think of some questions, not in order to answer them, but these questions will activate our mind and will give us some ideas. So look at these questions, and I have called them brainstorming questions. أسئلة للعصف الذهني. Questions that will make you think. 1. The girl knows a lot about her father's job, fox farmer, and she can even describe it in detail. What does this mean? Now, this is a very young girl, but she can describe the job in detail, as you have read in the story. Does this mean anything? 2. The girl says, I hated the hot, dark kitchen. Does this tell you anything about the character of the girl? She hates the kitchen, and all the time she runs away from the house to join her father. So can we guess anything about the character of the girl? 3. What is life on the farm like for each of the characters? What is the life of the father? How does it look like? The mother, the girl, the young boy. It seems that the 4 members of the family have different lives, in spite of the fact that they live in the same place. 4. How is the girl treated by her parents? She's treated in a different way by her mother and her father. 5. What are the girl's feelings toward her father, mother, and brother? So you see, 4 and 5 ask about 2 different things. 4 asks about how the parents treat the girl, while 5 asks about how the girl feels about her family. So these are questions with which we can begin, and at the end of the story, we can give some answers for these questions. Now let's look at this part from the story. This is taken from the story. Alive, the foxes inhabited a world my father made for them. It was surrounded by a high guard fence, like a medieval town, with a gate that was padlocked at night. There were feeding and watering dishes attached to the wire of the fence, in such a way that they could be emptied and cleaned from the outside. Everything was tidy and ingenious. My father was tirelessly inventive, and his favorite book in the world was Robinson Crusoe. He had fitted a tin drum on a wheelbarrow for bringing water down to the pens. This was my job in the summer, when the foxes had to have water twice a day. What I want you to notice here in this short paragraph is that this is what we call a descriptive paragraph. فقرة وصفية, descriptive. And you can see the title of this slide is description. So the girl is describing this world, the world of foxes, عالم الثعالب, in detail. And what she's describing here is the place her father has built for the foxes, مكان للثعالب, okay, where they can eat and drink water. And then in the middle of this description, we get a quick reference, إشارة سريعة, to the girl's feeling about her father. She says, my father was tirelessly inventive, مخترع دائما, and his favorite book in the world was Robinson Crusoe. Now, Robinson Crusoe is the name of a novel that was written in the 18th century. And then she speaks about the way these foxes drink, الطريقة اللي بيشربوا بيها مية. And she says, this was my job in the summer when the foxes had to have water twice a day, مرتين في اليوم. So many parts in this story are written in the descriptive style, because the girl describes the job of her father in detail, what he has to do, the steps, الخطوات with which he farms the foxes. And this is because, of course, she helps him a lot. She stays with him. So we don't hear, for example, this girl describing what her mother does in the house. No, we hear what lies outside the house. We hear about that world outside the house, the world of the father and his job. If you remember, in A Family Man, we talked about method of narration, أسلوب السرد. And we said that this is what we call the third person method of narration in A Family Man, because there is a narrator who is not Bernice or the wife of the professor. There is a narrator, الراوي العليم, who was narrating the story. And that's why we could understand each character. In this story, Boys and Girls, the young girl is the narrator. So all the time you read I, okay? This is what we call the first person method of narration. Now, how is that helpful to us? Of course, we keep receiving the point of view of the young girl all the time. We receive وجهة نظر the young girl all the time, because she is the character in the story who is narrating. هي شخصية في العمل وهي أيضا الراوي. So she gives us her point of view. And we also understand her point of view of her father, mother, and brothers. So we do not understand or know about the opinions or the point of view of, for example, the father about the young girl. No, we see all the events from one point of view. And this is the point of view of the girl. We understand the other characters through من خلال other things. For example, dialogue. There is a conversation that goes on between the father and the mother. From this conversation, we understand something about the opinions of the parents. But all the time we receive the point of view of the young girl. And this is what we call the first person method of narration. Now, this is again another paragraph from the story, which shows us how she sees her father, how the young girl sees her father. Let's read. My father did not talk to me unless It was about the job we were doing. So the only conversation between the father and the young girl is about the job they were doing. In this, he was quite different from my mother, who, if she was feeling cheerful, would tell me all sorts of things. So this is the difference between the father and the mother. The father is very quiet. He would not speak with the young girl except it's about the job they were doing, while the mother does something else. If she is cheerful, which means if she is in a good mood, she would start telling her daughter all sorts of things. Like what? The name of a dog she had had when she was a little girl. The names of boys she had gone out with later on when she was grown up, and what certain dresses of hers had looked like. She could not imagine now what had become of them. Whatever thoughts and stories my father had were private, and I was shy of him and would never ask him questions. So it seems that there is a conversation, communication. Sometimes, if the mother is in a good mood, then there is good, strong communication between the mother and the daughter. While, on the other hand, there is no communication between the father and the daughters. And this is what we understand from this paragraph. And in spite of all that, the girl wants to work with the fathers. Let's see her feelings towards her mother. She loved me, and she sat up late at night making a dress of the difficult style I wanted for me to wear when school started. But she was also my enemy. Now, this is a very strong sentence. The girl says that the mother was her enemy, عدو. Remember, this is the point of view of the girl. She was always plotting, تتآمر وتخطط. She was plotting now to get me to stay in the house more, although she knew I hated it. It refers to the house. Because she knew I hated it, and keep me from working for my father. So this is the point of view of the girl, that the mother was trying to make her stay in the house and prevent her from working with the father. It seemed to me she would do this simply out of perversity and to try her powers. فكرة التصميم وتجربة القوة. It did not occur to me, which means لم يخطر في بالي قط, that she could be lonely or jealous. So you see, this is a very complicated relation between the mother and the daughter. And we receive all this from the point of view of the daughter. This is not the point of view of the mother. The daughter believes that the mother is plotting against her. She even calls her mother enemy, عدو. Why all that? Because she hated the house. The young girl hated to stay in the house and wanted to keep working with the father outside in the farm. So this is actually what we need to focus on in this story. The relation of the girl with her mother and father, and her point of view of each one of them. Now, we get the point of view because this is the method of narration that we call first person narration. So what's the difference? You might be asking yourself now, what's the difference? Now, third person that we got in A Family Man, third person narrator controls all the characters. يسيطر على الشخصيات. Because this narrator knows everything about all the characters. And the narrator tells us how each character feels or thinks. While the first person, as we have this in this story, boys and girls, we receive the narration from one point of view. For example, here, it's the point of view of the young girl. In this story, we hear the girl's voice only. We know nothing about the point of view of the other characters. So this is the difference between third person method of narration and first person method of narration. Of course, in third person method of narration, the pronouns, الضمائر, used are always he or she or they, هو أو هي أو هم. Okay? While in the first person, it's the I, أنا. شعرت، رأيت، جلست. Now let's move to something we did before, setting. We said setting is about place and time. So in A Family Man, the setting was the house of Bernice. Well, not even the house. It was a very specific room in that house. And the way the room looked like reflects the character of Bernice. Setting is very important in this story, boys and girls. I told you at the very beginning, we have two places, the house and the farm. Spatial divisions. Now, divisions, you know, تقسيمات. Spatial is the adjective that comes from space. تقسيمات المكانية. And the control of space within the home and on the farm are emphasized by the young girl who comments on details that adults ignore. بتعلق على تفاصيل that adults الكبار ignore، بيتجاهلوها. So I want you please to learn this, spatial divisions, because throughout the story, you will notice that the two places inside the house and outside the house are sharply divided, مقسمين بحدة. So there are two specific places. We have the house, and in the house, we have two more places, the cellar, which means القبو, and a kitchen. Then outside the house, what do we have? We have the farm, المزرعة. And on this farm, we have the pens. Pens here means the places. It's very close to the word الحظيرة. The places where the foxes are kept. أماكن بيتم الاحتفاظ بها بالثعالب فيها. So these are the very two specific places in this story, and they mark the spatial divisions in the story. Well, still, it's not enough to say that. We need to understand what is the significance of that. ما أهمية ذلك? What is the link between the setting and the characters, between the places, أماكن, and the characters, الشخصيات? We need to understand. Look at the question. Where do we meet the characters? While reading the story, think, where do we meet each character? The girl, where do we meet her? The father, where do we meet him? The mother, the brother. Now, it seems that we begin the story and the girl is outside on the farm. The father is working on the farm or in the cellar, القبوة. The mother never goes to the cellar. لا تذهب مطلقا إلى القبو. It's only the girl and her brother, they sit and they watch the father in the cellar. The mother hates the cellar. The mother stays in the house, in the kitchen. The brother, we just heard his name from the young girl, and he keeps playing. So think of that. Where do we meet the characters of the story? And then you can understand something about each character. Look at this part from the story. I wheeled the tank up to the barn where it was kept. Now, this is part of the job of the girl. She's helping her father. And I heard my mother saying, wait till Laird gets a little bigger. Laird is the name of the girl's brother. Wait till he grows up. Then you will have real help. As if what the girl is doing now is not a real help. Another paragraph, and this is the mother speaking. And then I can use her more in the house. So the mother wants her son to replace her daughter in order to use her more in the house. I heard my mother say. She had a dead, quite regretful way of talking about me that always made me uneasy. Then the mother continues speaking. I just get my back turned and she runs off. أول ما أديها ظهري, she runs off, تختفي. It's not like I had a girl in the family at all. So we understand that the mother believes that this is not the right behavior of a girl, because the girl runs off from the house and goes out to stay with her father in the farm. So this is the relation of the places and the characters. It seems that the girl is rebelling against, بتتمرد على her traditional role, دورها التقليدي. And at this point, we can be introduced to this word, gender roles and space. Gender roles, أدوار الجندر, and the word gender simply means, if you are, I'm sure you have heard that word several times before, but let me give you exactly the meaning of gender. Gender means التشكل الثقافي والاجتماعي للجنسين. Okay, so it doesn't mean simply men and women. No. التشكل الثقافي والاجتماعي للجنسين. However, by now, the word gender is used in Arabic, so it's written gender in Arabic. Okay, and of course, this تشكل ثقافي and اجتماعي للجنسين means in men has certain roles and women has other roles, أدوار مختلفة. And these roles, هذه الأدوار, are related to space. Simply, women in the house, men outside the house. Women do all the housework while men work outside the house. If you remember our books, well, at least my book, when I was a kid, أمل تساعد ماما في المطبخ وعمر يلعب في الحديقة. Okay, so this is what we mean by gender roles. Okay, the very traditional, typical division of gender roles, تقسيم أدوار الجندر. And this is all related to space, المكان, المساحة. But it seems that in this story, the girl is not inside the house. She even hates the kitchen. This is what she said. She said, I hated the hot, dark kitchen. I hated the house. She does not conform to the traditional gender roles. لا تنصاع أو تلتزم بأدوار الجندر التقليدية. This is the meaning of she's rebelling against, تتمرد على her gender role. Now the reader finally can understand the title of the story. Remember the title of the story? It's Boys and Girls. The title refers to the life trajectory, مسار الحياة, roles, أدوار, and expectations, توقعات, from boys and girls. This is all conveyed through the voice of the girl, who is the narrator of the story. She rebels against the traditional role her mother wants her to conform to. للأم ترغب إن ابنتها تلتزم به. The girl's rebellion, تمرد الابنة, so rebellion is the noun and rebel is the verb. The girl's rebellion is portrayed بمعنى بيتم تصويره through من خلال the places she likes. She hates the house and likes to stay outside. How did we know that? Because she is the narrator. She is the one who said that. While on the other hand, the mother is waiting for her son to achieve his traditional role as well. This is what the mother said. Wait till Laird gets a little bigger and then you'll get real help. Boys and girls, generally speaking, and when you have boys and girls between inverted commas, علامات التنصيص, it means this is the title. So boys and girls, the story itself, is about the division of gender roles, okay, and how some people rebel against that. So we in this story, we have been introduced to three things. The first person method of narration, through which we receive the point of view of the narrator, one point of view only. The other thing we learned is how sometimes the setting, the places in the work of art في العمل الفني, how the setting reflects the characters, تعكس الشخصيات. And the third thing we learned is the gender roles and space, how gender roles are related to what we called before spatial divisions. Spatial divisions. Okay, so, and the point of view, of course, of the girl towards her mother and towards her father. Let me remind you of the very initial questions. Now, if you have read the story as I recommended, and when you listen to this video and concentrate, actually you can answer these questions, which I call them just brainstorming questions. With this story by Alice Munro, we reach the end of our syllabus, where we have learned how to read, how to analyze, how to understand some texts written in English. How do we approach each text? How do we analyze, نحلل? Of course, this is not everything in English literature. These were just examples, what we did. And thank you very much.